You are on the What I Never Saw channel. Enjoy watching. Sunday mornings used to be the most peaceful part of my week. It was our little ritual. Ellie and I would drive down the winding road toward the coast, windows cracked, her playlist drifting softly from the speakers, usually some mellow indie band I couldn't name, but she'd hum along like the lyrics had always been part of her. We'd get to the cafe around 9. Not early enough to be the first ones in, but early enough to snag that corner table by the window. The one with the crooked leg that wobbled unless you tucked a napkin under it just right. That morning was no different, at least at first. The sea breeze slipped in through the door every time it opened. Ellie wore that olive green sweater I liked, the one that made her eyes look brighter, and her hair was up in one of those messy buns that probably took more effort than she let on. I was halfway through a plate of eggs and toast, sipping black coffee, still shaking off sleep, when it happened. She reached into her tote to pull out her phone. Said she wanted to check if her manager had finally approved next week's schedule. I wasn't really listening. I'd heard plenty about the new boss at her firm, the borderline genius but chronically disorganized guy she'd started reporting to 2 months ago. Most of our conversations lately involved her work, actually. Her deadlines. Her team. Her stress. I didn't mind. I wanted to support her. I always had. But as I glanced up from my plate, I caught something I wasn't supposed to see. Her phone was face up on the table beside her plate, just for a second. The screen hadn't dimmed yet. And there, framed neatly between her water glass and her fork, was a photo I'd never seen before. Ellie smiling wide, her head tilted back in that unfiltered, caught-off-guard kind of laugh that she only made when she was really enjoying herself. She looked good, like someone entirely unburdened, carefree. Not tired from work. Not distracted like she'd been at home lately. Her arms were wrapped tightly around a man. I blinked once slowly, tried not to react, tried to process. He was attractive, sharp suit, dark hair, just enough scruff. His chin was tucked slightly toward her temple, as if he were saying something no one else was meant to hear. His hand rested at her waist, fingers spread out like it was second nature. I didn't recognize him exactly, not by name, but there was something familiar about him, like I'd seen him before. In passing. Probably in one of those corporate event snaps *TS Ellie showed me once in a while, always with a throwaway comment like, ugh, another networking dinner, or don't laugh. I had to pose with the interns. But this wasn't an intern, and this wasn't just a group picture. Before I could say a word, she noticed. Oh, she said, laughing lightly, too lightly, and flipped the screen over in a smooth, almost practiced motion. That's just from the marketing launch last month. It was crazy crowded. Everyone was hugging everyone. You know how it gets after open bar. She smiled at me like it was nothing, like it didn't matter. Then she picked up her fork and started cutting into her pancakes like we were just two people having a quiet breakfast, and I hadn't just seen her pressed up against another man like they'd been carved from the same stone. I didn't call her out. I didn't ask questions. I just nodded, gave a small chuckle like I was in on the joke, and sipped my coffee. But something in me, something I hadn't even known was fragile, cracked. It wasn't the photo itself, not entirely. It wasn't even the way they looked together. It was the instinct. The way her face changed when she saw that I'd noticed. The speed with which she reached for the phone. The way she didn't explain until she absolutely had to. It felt rehearsed. It felt like deflection. And it felt wrong. I tried to push it aside. I really did. We finished breakfast like usual. She told me about some charity gala she might have to attend next week, and I offered to iron her dress like I always did for those things. She smiled, said I was sweet, and reached across the table to touch my hand. It should have reassured me. Instead, her touch felt colder than the air drifting in from the water. When we got back in the car, I told myself I was overthinking it. That it really could have been just a photo. That the guy, whoever he was, probably had been in 100 other group pictures. Maybe it just looked more in *mate than it really was. I even convinced myself to forget about it by the time we pulled into the driveway. But that night, while she was in the shower, I found myself reaching for her phone, not to snoop, just to see, just to understand if maybe it was part of a photo dump she'd posted, or if maybe it had been sent in a group chat and she'd opened it without thinking. But the screen was locked. Face ID only. And I didn't know her passcode anymore. That realization hit me harder than the photo itself. It wasn't like I needed to know her code. We weren't the kind of couple who hovered over each other's phones. But there was a time when she used to hand hers to me freely, to answer texts while she drove, to check something quickly while we were watching a movie. We used to be that close, that trusting. Now her phone never left her side. That night, I laid in bed beside her, staring at the ceiling while she slept with her back to me. I could hear the soft rhythm of her breathing, steady and peaceful. But my own thoughts raced. Had I missed other signs? Had I been too busy, too focused on making sure our life was stable, too wrapped up in my job, our mortgage, our errands, to notice her drifting? I didn't want to believe that. I didn't want to believe she could be someone who'd lie to my face with a smile. But still, something had shifted. Maybe not between us just yet, but definitely in me. It was small, like a misstep on a staircase you thought you knew by heart. But once you lose trust in your footing, it changes how you walk forever. I told myself I was imagining things, that she'd never hurt me like that. But the truth is, I didn't really believe it. Not anymore. After that Sunday morning at the cafe, things didn't explode. Nothing fell apart right away. There was no argument, no confrontation, no dramatic reveal. In fact, life went on almost exactly as it had before. That's the part one can't get over. How betrayal doesn't always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it creeps in like a draft through a cracked window, quiet and cold, until one day you realize the whole house is freezing and you never noticed when it started. In the weeks that followed, I tried to shake it off. The photo, the excuse, the feeling. I kept telling myself there was no real proof, that I was being irrational, that I should trust Ellie. She was my wife. But once a seed of doubt is planted, it doesn't just sit there. It grows, slowly and stubbornly, whether you water it or not. The changes were subtle at first. She started staying late at work more often, always for meetings or last-minute presentations that seemed to come out of nowhere. I wanted to believe her. I mean, her job was demanding. She'd worked hard to get to where she was. I'd always admired her ambition. But there was something in the way she said it now. Less explanation, more expectation. Like I wasn't even supposed to question it. She'd come home smelling faintly of wine and something floral I didn't recognize. Not her usual perfume, something lighter, softer. Her laugh was louder when she walked through the door, like she was still echoing from some moment I hadn't been a part of. I asked her about her day, and she gave me polished summaries, never messy, never emotional. Her phone stayed face down. Her laptop remained closed. We used to share everything, not just schedules and to-do lists, but the small stuff. Dumb jokes, awkward encounters, random cravings. That kind of Macy you don't even realize you're building until it's gone. Now, I found myself learning about her day secondhand. A calendar invite left on the screen, a text notification that popped up and vanished before I could see the name. One night, she mentioned a new work friend, Nate. Just like that. Nate said the client's a nightmare, so we'll probably be stuck on this proposal all week. Casual. Smooth. Like I was supposed to accept that name and move on. And I did at first. But I remembered him. He was the guy from the photo. I was sure of it. I didn't say anything. I just nodded and smiled. Inside, something twisted. From then on, the patterns became impossible to ignore. Nate's name started showing up more often, not in ways that screamed trouble, but in those little, repeated mentions that lingered. Nate thought that ad campaign looked too flat. Nate wants to run the numbers again. Nate might need me in early on Friday. The way she said his name, there was a certain ease, a rhythm to it. Like she thought about him even when she wasn't talking about him. I didn't want to admit it, but I recognized that tone. I used to be the one she talked about that way. Then there were the family events. Ellie had always been the planner. Birthdays, barbecues, holidays. She loved organizing everything, right down to the decorations and the playlists. But lately, she seemed distant. I'd find out about plans last minute, like I was just another guest she forgot to loop in. Once, her cousin had a birthday party, and I only found out the day before, not because she told me, but because her sister texted me asking what dessert we were bringing. When I brought it up, Ellie just shrugged and said, "Sorry, I figured you wouldn't mind if I handled it." Handled it. That word stuck with me, like I was a logistical detail. A checkbox. We went through the motions, dinners, Netflix, brushing our teeth side by side. But the warmth between us had cooled. We stopped reaching for each other. Conversations got shorter. I'd ask how her day was, and she'd answer with a clipped, "Fine, busy," then disappear upstairs with her phone. Sometimes she'd laugh softly while texting, and when I glanced over, she'd lock the screen like it was nothing. When I asked who it was, she'd say, "Just work stuff." with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I know what people would say, that I should have asked her directly, that I should have confronted her the moment things felt off. But the truth is, I was scared. Not just scared of the answer, but of what it would confirm about us. About me. That maybe I hadn't been enough. That maybe I'd been asleep at the wheel. Because here's the thing they don't tell you about long-term relationships. The erosion is quiet. There's no countdown. You don't wake up one day and suddenly realize you're strangers. It happens slowly. Missed connections. Lingering silences. Secrets wrapped in routine. I started keeping a list, not physically, but in my head. A running tally of every odd moment. Every red flag. Every time she looked at me like I was a step behind. It wasn't about catching her. It was about preserving my sanity. If I didn't keep track, I would have convinced myself I was imagining it. Once, I caught her standing outside in the backyard, phone to her ear, pacing slowly like she was trying not to be heard. She never noticed I was watching through the kitchen window. When she came back inside, I asked who it was. She said it was her mom, that they were just catching up. But her mom had already texted me that morning to ask if Ellie had time to chat that week. Another night, I woke up around 2 a.m. and found her gone from bed. I walked downstairs and saw the soft glow of her laptop from the dining room. She was typing fast, headphones in. When she noticed me, she jumped. Couldn't sleep, she said quickly, closing the laptop with a snap. Figured I'd catch up on some email. I just nodded, told her to come back to bed. I didn't ask why her email was open to a blank message draft with no address typed in. I didn't ask why her shoulders tensed when I stepped closer. I didn't want to know the answer. But I did. And once I knew, I couldn't unknow it. The hardest part wasn't the lies. It wasn't the secrets or even the suspicion. It was the slow realization that I wasn't part of her life anymore. Not really. I was there physically, still doing the dishes, still walking the dog, still picking up her dry cleaning. But emotionally, I'd been moved to the background. I was maintenance, stability, a familiar place to land when the day was too long. And Nate, or whoever he really was to her, had become the spark. That realization hit me one evening when I walked into the living room and saw her curled up on the couch, laughing at something on her phone. The sound was real, full, effortless. I hadn't heard her laugh like that around me in months. When she saw me, she muted the phone and smiled politely. Just politely, like I was someone interrupting her good mood. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of her soft breathing beside me, wondering how long it had been since she last reached for me in the dark, wondering if she still thought about me at all. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just tired. Tired of trying to pretend everything was okay. Tired of doubting myself. Tired of being in a marriage that looked perfect on the outside but felt hollow on the inside. Something had changed between us. And no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, I knew deep down it wasn't going back. Not this time. Sometimes the truth doesn't scream. It whispers. And when it finally speaks loud enough to hear, it's not dramatic or loud. It's obvious. It's been standing there the whole time, waiting for you to stop pretending it wasn't real. The moment everything broke for me didn't come with shouting or a fight. It came with a vase of lilies and a man I'll never meet again. It had been a long week. Ellie was out of town, allegedly. Another conference in the city, something about a regional strategy meeting and a new client campaign. She left on a Thursday morning, kissed me on the cheek, and said she'd be back Saturday evening. I didn't even ask where she was staying. I'd stopped asking by then. What was the point? That Friday afternoon, I decided, for no real reason, to send her flowers. Not as a grand gesture. Just to remind her I still thought of her. Maybe I was clinging to something. Maybe I was hoping a bouquet could reach her in a way I no longer could. So I ordered a small arrangement of lilies, her favorite. I asked the florist to send them to her office, thinking she might swing by on her way back from the conference or have a colleague bring them home. Something small, thoughtful. I left a short message, still thinking of you. Jack. I figured that would be the end of it. 2 hours later, I got a call from the courier. Hey, he said awkwardly. Just wanted to let you know I couldn't make the delivery. The receptionist said the office was closed for a private meeting. Couple of people inside asked not to be disturbed. I blinked. Are you sure it was her office? Yeah, he said. Room 415. I even double-checked the name. Ellie Bennett. But someone waved me off and said to come back Monday. Sorry, man. I thanked him and hung up. Then I just sat there, staring at my phone like it might suddenly give me a different version of the story. It didn't. Room 415. That was her office. Not a hotel. Not a conference room at a convention center. Her office. I opened my calendar app, scrolled to her shared events. She had marked herself as client travel for 2 days. But the address linked to the appointment? Still the same downtown office building. She hadn't gone anywhere. I stared at the screen for a long time. There was no spinning it. No room left for maybe. The courier had nothing to gain by lying. The receptionist had no idea who I was. The office was closed. Not empty, just closed. Occupied. And someone didn't want flowers showing up. I waited until that evening. When she called me around 6, her voice was full of fake exhaustion. God, Jack, I'm so wiped, she said. The meetings went long, and we still have to do the roundtables tomorrow morning. I might not be back until late. I kept my voice calm. Sure, no problem. She didn't ask how my day was. She never did anymore. After the call, I sat in the living room alone with the lights off. The quiet buzz of the fridge was the only sound in the house. The flowers I'd ordered were already refunded. I didn't bother texting her about it. I didn't see the point. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the same question on repeat. How long had I been irrelevant to her? The next day, she came home around 4. Walked through the door with her overnight bag and a paper coffee cup she discarded in the trash without a word. She was wearing that beige coat I'd bought her last winter, the one she said made her feel put together. I watched her walk through the kitchen, humming lightly under her breath like someone who'd had a pleasant day. She didn't say where she'd been. I didn't ask. That night, I sat across from her on the couch. The TV was on. She scrolled her phone. We hadn't spoken in over 20 minutes. I finally said, I sent you flowers. She looked up. What? Yesterday. To your office. Her face flickered for half a second. Oh, that's sweet. But I wasn't there. I nodded. That's what they said. Someone was in the room, though. Reception said it was closed for a meeting. Said you were inside. With someone. She blinked. That's not. I was just picking something up. Nate was helping me prep slides. I didn't want the courier interrupting. I nodded again. That was all I needed. That night, I took off my wedding ring. Quietly. No drama. No speech. I just slipped it from my finger and set it on the bathroom counter next to the toothbrush we used to share. It made a tiny clicking sound when it touched the ceramic. I stared at it for a while, then turned off the light and went to bed. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't ask for more details. I didn't need them. The truth wasn't in the explanations. It was in the pattern. It was in the way she didn't look surprised. In the way she didn't offer comfort. In how she didn't even reach for my hand when I sat down beside her. She'd left me a long time ago. That night, I lay awake next to her and realized I felt nothing. No rage. No heartbreak. Just stillness. The kind of clarity that only comes after you've been fooling yourself for too long. She shifted in her sleep and turned away from me. I stared at the ceiling and tried to remember the last time she'd said, I love you, without it sounding like a closing phrase. The next morning, I woke up early. Made coffee. Let the dog out. Then I walked back into the bedroom and watched her sleep for a moment, wondering what version of herself she was in her dreams. Whether she felt guilty. Whether she even thought I noticed. She opened her eyes and looked at me, half awake. Hey, she mumbled. I said nothing. And then I walked out. Not just out of the room. Out of everything. I didn't slam the door. I didn't leave a note. I didn't pack a suitcase or shout something final and cinematic. I didn't even grab my coat. I just got in the car and drove. Because the truth had already burned everything down. There was no confrontation left to have. No revelation. No bargaining. No saving. There was only this. The man I'd become, quiet, overlooked, dismissed, was not someone I recognized anymore. And I wasn't going to wait for someone else to give me permission to exist again. When I left, I didn't slam the door. I didn't leave a note or pack a bag. I didn't check the weather or gas up the car or do any of the normal things people do when they go away. I just walked out the front door with the keys in my pocket and started driving west. There wasn't a plan. I didn't have some dramatic destination in mind. No grand symbolic place I'd always dreamed of escaping to. I just needed distance. Not from Ellie, necessarily, though that was part of it, but from everything. From the neighborhood, where people waved as if they knew me. From the house that had slowly filled with silence. From the mailbox stuffed with grocery flyers and past due notices. from the life I had been holding together with a thread. I passed through the city outskirts without noticing. Concrete turned to hills, hills turned to open road. I stopped only for coffee once. I didn't check my phone. I didn't listen to music. Just the sound of the tires humming against pavement and the wind curling through the cracked window. Somewhere along the way, I remembered the cabin. It wasn't a place I'd thought about in years. My grandfather left it to me when he passed, an old hunting cabin buried deep in the mountains, just across the state line. He used to take me up there when I was a kid. Back then it felt like the edge of the world. No Wi-Fi, no neighbors, no paved driveway. Just a patch of land surrounded by trees and a one-room cabin with a sagging roof and a rusted-out wood stove. I hadn't visited since college. Life got in the way. Marriage, work, bills. Ellie never liked the idea of roughing it, so I let it go. But now it was the only place that made any kind of sense. I reached the turnoff just before dusk. A narrow dirt path branched off the highway, barely visible through the brush. I eased the car forward, branches scraping the sides like fingernails. The last half-mile I had to walk. The road had washed out years ago, and I wasn't about to ruin my tires trying to push through. When I finally stepped into the clearing, there it was. The cabin, crooked and leaning slightly, the wood weathered gray, the windows clouded with grime. The old porch steps groaned under my weight, but they held. I fumbled with the key I still had on my ring, surprised it hadn't rusted through, and pushed open the door. The air inside was stale, dust everywhere, cobwebs in the corners. But it was still standing. It felt like a secret I'd forgotten I was allowed to keep. The first few days passed in a kind of haze. I swept. I aired the place out. I found the box of tools my grandfather had left behind, wrapped in an oily rag under the floorboards. I patched holes in the walls with scrap wood from behind the shed, fixed the stove, cleaned out the gutters, chopped wood, hauled water from the creek, replaced the busted panes in the windows with plastic sheeting. No one knew where I was. No one called. Or maybe they did. I wouldn't know. My phone was off, stuffed in the glove box of the car I parked just out of view behind a bend in the trail. I told myself I'd turn it on eventually, just to check in, just to let someone know I was alive. I never did. The strange thing was, I didn't miss anything. Not really. I didn't miss the TV or the fridge or the internet. I didn't miss the news or the traffic or the sound of my neighbor's lawnmowers. I didn't miss the lukewarm dinners Ellie and I had been eating in silence, or the way her phone always lit up after 10 p.m., or how she'd say, "I'm just tired," every time I asked if something was wrong. What I did miss, and I only realized it in the quiet, was myself. Not the version of me that Ellie had known in the last couple of years. Not the husband who forgot birthdays or burned toast or came home late from work with the weight of someone else's emergencies on his back. I missed the me from before all of it. The guy who could spend an entire afternoon fixing something just to understand how it worked. The guy who loved the way pine needles smelled in the morning and didn't care if there was reception. Up here, everything moved slower. Or maybe it didn't move at all. There were days when I didn't speak. Not out of sadness, just absence. I didn't need to explain anything to anyone. I didn't need to justify why I hadn't shaved or why I didn't answer a text. The cabin didn't ask for anything. It just sat there, patient and broken, waiting to be put back together. And that's what I did. I rebuilt. Not just the structure, though I did fix the roof, seal the cracks, even jerry-rig the old generator to power a few lights. I rebuilt the silence inside me, gave it shape, let it breathe. Each day had a rhythm. Wake up with the sun, brew coffee over the propane burner, step outside, chop wood, carry water, patch something, rest, repeat. I journaled sometimes. Nothing poetic, just lists. What I fixed, what I saw, the birds that nested in the rafters, the fox that wandered too close, the storm that knocked over a dead tree by the creek. I didn't write about Ellie. Not once. Not because I was trying to forget her, but because the version of me that had loved her, clung to her, depended on her. He wasn't here anymore. He had stayed behind, standing in that quiet kitchen with a wedding ring sitting next to a toothbrush, waiting for someone to come back who never really would. Sometimes I wondered if she tried to find me, if she sent texts, left voicemails, called friends. But if she had, no one told me. I imagined her telling people I was being dramatic, that I'd gone off the grid. Maybe she made herself the victim. Maybe she believed she was. It didn't matter. Out here, her voice couldn't reach me. Neither could the sound of my own self-doubt. I began to like who I was when no one else was watching. There was a day, I think it was a Thursday, though I'd stopped tracking, when I stood in front of the mirror and realized I looked different. Not just unshaven or tired, but centered. I had lines on my face I didn't remember earning. My shoulders sat differently. My eyes weren't darting anymore. I wasn't waiting for anything. I wasn't angry anymore, either. That surprised me. The anger had been sharp at first. It flared when I thought about the courier, about the flowers, about the look on Ellie's face when she lied and expected me to believe it. But that anger didn't last. Because I understood something now that I hadn't before. People don't destroy relationships all at once. They wear them down slowly. With silence. With selfishness. With moments they think don't count. Ellie hadn't betrayed me out of cruelty. She'd done it out of distance. And I had let that distance grow, thinking if I just held on tighter, I could bring her back. But I didn't need to bring her back. I needed to bring me back. And that's what the mountains gave me. Not an escape. Not a hiding place. But a mirror. A challenge. A way back to stillness. I don't know how long I stayed up there. A month. Maybe more. The days blurred into each other like fog across the trees. All I know is this. By the time the first snow came and the birds went quiet, I wasn't the man who had walked out of that suburban house. That man was tired, unsure, hollowed out by doubt. But the one standing here, watching the frost cling to the cabin windows, hearing the fire pop softly in the stove, he didn't need anyone's permission to exist. He didn't need to be missed. He didn't need to be found. I didn't go back. Not right away. Maybe not ever. Not in the way Ellie probably expected. I didn't check in. I didn't send a message, or a postcard, or even one of those cryptic updates that says, "I'm fine," when you're anything but. I disappeared, quietly, intentionally, and I stayed that way. But the world kept moving without me. That's what they don't tell you when you leave. Things fall apart in your absence. The pieces you used to hold together, the ones no one noticed until they were missing, start to come loose. Slowly at first, then all at once. I heard things eventually, indirectly, through gaps in the silence. Kayla, our daughter, or, technically, Ellie's from a previous relationship, though I'd raised her since she was 5, stopped going to school consistently. Her teachers started calling, emails piling up in the inbox Ellie had started forwarding to spam. She began skipping classes altogether, sneaking out late, avoiding the house unless she had to be in it. The straight A, a student who used to ask me to proofread her essays, now barely passed. She stopped texting me after the first week. I don't blame her. I left without a word. I didn't even look her in the eyes that morning. I told myself she wouldn't notice, that she had Ellie, that she'd be fine. That lie haunted me more than anything else. The dog, Cooper, stopped eating regularly. That part came from our old neighbor, Greg. He'd been walking his lab past our house every morning for years, and one day he left a voicemail on my old number that I didn't check until much later. "Hey Jack," Greg had said. "I don't know where you are, man, but Cooper's been out on the porch for hours every day. Just lying there. He's not barking or anything, just waiting. Thought you should know." I must have listened to that message 6 times. He used to wait by the door when I got home from work, tail wagging like it was the best part of his day. I wonder how long he waited for me after I left. How many mornings he sat staring at a door that no longer opened. Inside the house, things started to break, small things at first. The heater died in late November. Ellie tried to fix it herself. I know this because I got a charge notification from our old joint Home Depot account. Space heaters, duct tape, a YouTube repair guide. I could picture her in the garage, swearing under her breath, hair tied back, tools scattered like a storm around her. She was always impatient with mechanical things. I used to handle that stuff. Filters, wiring, tuning the furnace. I don't think she ever noticed how often I kept it running until it stopped. Then came the plumbing. A pipe burst in the kitchen. I saw the invoice later. Emergency services. After-hours call. Hundreds of dollars to patch a problem I used to fix with a wrench and a little patience. The front lawn turned wild. No one mowed it. No one cared. Weeds crawled up the side of the porch. The roses I planted years ago, the ones Ellie insisted she didn't have time to water, withered and turned to brittle sticks. The house didn't fall apart all at once, but you could hear the difference. Even from far away, I imagined the walls echoing. The kind of quiet that isn't peace, just absence. Like when the power goes out and you suddenly notice how much sound a home normally makes. Ellie tried to hold things together, I think. For a while. She kept up the routines, posted photos of dinners she didn't eat, captioned family updates with words like resilient and healing. I guess she needed the illusion to keep face, to feel in control of the narrative. But the cracks were visible. You can't fake warmth when there's no one left to reflect it. And then there was Kayla. God, Kayla. She stopped playing soccer, quit the team without telling anyone. I only found out because one of the assistant coaches sent a mass email to parents, trying to rally interest for the spring season. We miss Kayla's energy out there, the message said. Hope to see her back on the field soon. She didn't go back. She boxed up her cleats and the gear I'd spent a weekend customizing for her, painted her name on her shin guards, tightened the straps myself. I didn't even know she still had them until I saw a picture weeks later, posted by a friend. The box was sitting by the trash cans. It felt like a funeral. She started spending nights away from home. Not officially. No sleepovers. No friends' houses Ellie could confirm. Just long absences. Staying out past curfew. Coming home with that look. The one that says, "Don't ask because I won't tell you." Ellie had no control. No connection. Whatever bond they had started slipping the moment I left. Or maybe it had been slipping long before, and I'd been the bridge. The buffer. The only thing holding the center. I used to drive her to school. She used to tell me everything. Her crushes. Her bad test scores. Her stupid drama with girls who changed best friends every week. Now silence. I was no longer the person she ran to. And Ellie? She tried calling. A few times at first. Then more urgently. A flurry of messages. Missed calls. Then emails. I'd glance at them occasionally, when I turned my phone on to check the weather. The subject lines blurred together. We need to talk. Come home, please. It's not too late. But they were never really about me. They were about the house. The responsibilities. The broken heater. The unpaid bills. Kayla's truancy notices. Cooper's behavior. A leaky roof. The tax renewal on the car I'd left behind. None of the messages said, "I miss you." Not really. They said, "I need help." There's a difference. And so I stayed gone. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't spite. It was survival. Because what I finally understood, sitting in that cabin, watching snow drift past the window while the fire popped in the stove, was that I had spent years being the foundation for something that wasn't even standing anymore. I had carried the weight of the entire structure on my back, while Ellie filled it with someone else's voice, someone else's warmth. And when I stepped away, the house sagged. Because it had nothing underneath it. No roots. No honesty. No love that meant anything real. Ellie was capable, sure. Strong in a way I used to admire. But her strength had always been curated, filtered, measured, selective. She could manage 100 clients and 15 deadlines, but not a furnace. Not a teenage daughter unraveling at the seams. Not the simple, unglamorous maintenance of a shared life. I don't think she ever saw me until I was gone. Not really. She saw what I did, not who I was. And now she was left with all the things I used to do, and none of the person who made them feel like more than chores. That's what I'd become to her, in the end, a function, a reliable machine. Quiet, efficient, unnoticed until it broke down. And now? Now she noticed. But it was too late. The house was cold. The grass grew wild. The girl we raised was drifting farther away with every passing day. The dog waited at a door that wouldn't open. It wasn't punishment. It was the truth finally echoing through the walls. And without me, the illusion crumbled. One forgotten piece at a time.